Your Olympic hero has arrived. It's true, it's true.
You're watching Fugitive Red-Eye, and welcome to another episode of Overanalyzing, the series where I take a more in-depth look at the fictional universes which I love. This video contains spoilers for Undertale. Today we'll be talking about Undertale, which I've talked about quite a few times on the channel, and I've streamed through quite a few times on the channel. So when you think of Undertale, what do you think of? You think of the characters, you think of the story, you think of the music. But when you think about the story, what do you think about? You're probably thinking of two things, right? Pacifist or genocide. That's all people think about. People think about pacifist and genocide as the story of Undertale. Most people, they play through the game on pacifist, and then they do genocide, or they don't do genocide. Nobody ever starts with genocide, which, obviously, due to the genocide consequences, that is probably the smart move. Although I gotta say, I wish there were more genocide consequences. I hate how little it actually changes. It only changes the endings to pacifist and genocide, and only slightly. However, one of the problems I have with the fanbase, and I think most people have with the fanbase, is, telling people how to play it. Now, obviously, I'm not talking about helping people out and things like that. I mean pressuring people into doing the pacifist on their first playthrough, and then either never doing genocide or just doing genocide as a follow-up to pacifist. As you may know from watching me for a while, the genocide route is my favorite route. However, despite this, it's actually not my favorite ending. Neither is the pacifist ending, and that brings me to the main meat and potatoes of today's video. And that is Undertale's neutral route. Now, the neutral route is one that gets often overlooked by most people, but I actually think it's the most natural way to start the game, because I think the best way to play a game oftentimes is to go in blind. And Undertale is no exception to this. Now, obviously, I'm not going to tell people they can't play it if they've been told about it, because that'd be ridiculous. I'm all for gatekeeping, but that's just fucking silly. And the whole point of an RPG is to roleplay, right? You're playing it to roleplay. You're playing it as an RPG to make your own choices. Which is why I don't like the attitude of, you must play pacifist first. I think introducing to someone to the game, I would have them go in blind if possible, if they've never had it spoiled. That would make it a very unique experience. Because logically, their instincts playing RPGs are going to get them a neutral route. I would say they would likely kill a few monsters at the start and then start sparing stuff as they go along. They probably wouldn't go out of their way to go genocide, because again, you'd have to do a lot of grinding to do that, especially early on. And obviously there's a failsafe in place for that, in the fact that you have to actually actively grind. Most people would probably just do a couple encounters and then move on. Even if they were grinding, they probably wouldn't know that they would keep coming, because after a while they get few and far between and sparser. But I think going into the game and being judged and being told the meaning of EXP and love and stuff like that has a lot more impact if you don't know anything about it, and then you go in, you've gained some EXP, and then you're like, oh shit. It actually makes you feel guilty for it. If you're actually just playing it knowing you have to be a pacifist, that's ridiculous. You're not going to get the same experience. I think most people would probably get an undone ending their first playthrough, or possibly a flawed pacifist ending, which is the one you have to get the pacifist ending. Granted, that's what most people are pressured into doing, but I think if you're going to play the game, you should go in blind and actually just play it normally, because then it's going to have much more impact. And then I've heard the argument from Spencer all the time that, well, yeah, but if you're only going to play one, then you should play the pacifist. And it's like, sure, but that's really not the best way to introduce someone to a game. I think it's best to experience it blind, and then after that, you go and maybe do it the other way. You look into the other ways to play it. But the reason the neutral route is so underrated is because there is so many endings and pieces of content that are just completely ignored by the vast majority of people. That Undertale has over 30 endings, right? I've done most of the endings. There's still actually a couple I haven't done because I forgot about the dog ending. But not only are the endings different depending on who you've killed throughout the run, but the dialogue can be different too. Sans will have unique dialogue whether or not you've killed Papyrus throughout the game. Once you get to Hotland, whether or not Papyrus is alive will completely determine whether or not the Sans date, if you want to call it that. I wouldn't call it that, but that's what it's typically referred to. When you go and you sit down and have dinner with him, and he explains that he's rooting for you and the promise he made tutorial and stuff, the existence of that entire conversation is determined by whether or not Papyrus is alive or dead. Not to mention when he's judging you, whether or not you've killed Papyrus will introduce an entirely different element to it. For the record, my favorite ending is the Papyrus ending, which is where you kill all of the prominent authority figures with the exception of Papyrus, so you kill basically every boss but Papyrus. Because it's the saddest. Another thing that's sad that's, like, locked behind the neutral route is Undyne's neutral death. Undyne's neutral death, I think, is one of, if not the saddest cutscene in the entire game, and a lot of people don't even know about it, or have never actually done it, just because they only think of sparing Undyne, or Undyne the Undying. I think you miss out on a whole lot of shit if you're just like, oh, neutral doesn't matter, it's either pacifist or genocide. Do pacifist first, then do genocide. I like pacifist, I like genocide. Genocide is my favorite route. Pacifist is also great. But the neutral route is so horribly underappreciated. Like, there are so many little different nuances and things that add on to the various different endings. And that makes it so interesting. Undyne's speech that she gives you when you first fight her is completely determined on how many people you've killed. Like, she has several different variations of it. Whether you've killed Papyrus, whether you've killed the different dogs in Snowden, whether you've killed nobody, whether you've genocided everybody. Obviously, that's Undyne the Undying. And even with, you know, doing a genocide run for most of it, there's also an aborted genocide ending, the Alphys ending, where you abort genocide after Undyne the Undying. Like, there are so many different endings that so many people miss out on just because they're so fucking obsessed with doing pacifist or genocide, and that's it. And I think the neutral route deserves some more love. I love the neutral route. But anyway, that's really all I have to say. I hope you guys enjoyed. Have a good one. Toodles.
What a grand adventure this has been. God bless us, everyone. God, yeah. As soon as I can walk again, I'm gonna kick that kid's ass.
Subscribe to Fiji to Red Eye.